if you're asking me, was there a connection in that regard at the end game, I'm not going to deny that.
In basic English, you're saying that you wouldn't give them the $400 million in cash until the prisoners were released, correct?
That's correct.
And there we have the minor bombshell going off late this afternoon that has everybody in a hubbub. State Department spokesman John Kirby admitting a direct connection between Iran releasing American prisoners and the U.S. handing over $400 million. And those beeping sounds you hear are coming from the White House as they need to back up on some previous statements. But hold that thought. We're going to circle back around momentarily because we're going to begin with some history. The old sayings have never ceased to work for every political situation. You take your pick which one fits. Money changes everything. Money talks. Money is the root of all evil, which might be the best way to describe what is making the rounds, thanks to yet another bunch of hacked emails. These coming from a group that describes themselves as American hacktivists. Released over the weekend, only now starting to make hard ripples across Washington and the D.C. machine. Because if they are to be believed, there is no more evil individual permeating the political scene at this moment than George Soros, the left-leaning American oligarch who has his hands in everything that the right just rails against. So let's get to work with a reminder that if you are not on the line right now at 1-877-Newsmax, you're missing your chance to weigh in on where we go from here. Let's get to it. Former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Shillman Sr. Fellow for the Investigative Project on Terrorism, author of Architects of Disaster. Always a pleasure to welcome Pete Hoekstra. And also joining us, he's a veteran of the 1980 Ronald Reagan campaign, GOP media consultant, and host of Front Row on UNC TV's North Carolina channel, Marc Rotterman. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Pete, let's get to you right away. George Soros is all the talk right now around D.C. because of his influence, his money. Emails talking about perhaps that he did indeed urge intervention in Albania's political unrest, and days later, the envoy he recommended was dispatched to the region, and this came allegedly from Hillary Clinton and her own office here. Let's get to Soros. In your opinion, how dangerous is he?
Well, he's no more dangerous, let me be very clear, no more dangerous than any other American in terms of expressing his views and his ideas. Now, he's got a lot of money behind him to drive his opinion. I think the scary thing about George Soros is what he stands for. This is a guy that basically is 100% in favor of globalization, no borders, free immigration, total amnesty, and those types of things. What scares me about George Soros is the ideas and the policies that he wants in place in America, because I think they undercut our values and our perspective in the things that make America very, very great.
So, Mark, let's look at some of the other information that we're now getting out from all of these emails. The Open Society Foundation, his vehicle for progressive social change, orchestrated a well-funded attempt to secure a desired outcome in a U.S. Supreme Court case on illegal immigration enforcement. This is a newly discovered memo between the organization's top U.S. officials and the board members. This is a guy putting his hand and his money in the U.S. Supreme Court. Should this not raise stunning alarm bells, not just for people on the right, but for Americans everywhere?
Well, it should, but there's so much coming so fast, Ed, it's hard to keep up. I mean, money talks with the Clinton administration. Our institutions are failing. The FBI gives Hillary a pass on classified emails. So I think the American public's being bombarded by scandals coming out of Washington. But let's be clear about Soros. He puts his money where his mouth is, and he's pushing a big left-wing progressive agenda.
If indeed the right is looking to defeat Hillary Clinton, Mark, should they not immediately think to themselves, we need to defeat George Soros as well?
Yes, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, I think this is a clear-cut case right now, whether you want the status quo or you want change. And if Trump can define this as a changed election, he will win. But if this is a referendum on Trump, he is going to lose. So I think he's got to stop the unforced errors and move forward. In the last couple of days, he's done a very good job with 2 policy speeches that I think were home runs.
You mentioned Donald Trump. His new Trump campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, says the Steve Bannon hire is the best way to fight against the Clinton machine. Here's what she said.
I tell you what Donald Trump needs. He needs people who are like him in this sense. You have to be unapologetically, unflinchingly unafraid of Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton and all that Clinton campaign means. because we feel like we're up against a major machine here. And we, you need people girded for battle who are at least willing to, as we like to say, leave it all on the field, give it our best shot.
Pete, you can do all you want, and you can change all the people that you want, but if you read a lot of the media reports from legitimate and illegitimate media, no matter how you want to slice it, there's a lot of donors out there, big money GOP donors, who are still sitting on the sideline. When they hear a guy named Steve Bannon, they go, who is this guy? I mean, why are we supposed to believe that this is the one that's going to turn us around? Is it not fair to say that you've still got a donor class sitting out there that's not impressed?
You may have a donor class that's not impressed, but hey, were they impressed by the John McCain campaign? Were they impressed by the the Mitt Romney campaign?
Well, they must have been, because they were giving money to those campaigns by this time,
right.
Pete.
And these are the same people that gave they gave Jeb Bush more than $100 million. I mean, 9 months ago, Jeb Bush was the nominee. The only problem was no votes had been cast. He had the A team and all of those types of things. This is a change election. People are frustrated, and I'm glad that we brought Steve Bannon on. We do need a fighter. We are fighting the most corrupt, the most experienced political team out there, the Clinton team, and we are not going to win this race by playing. We're not going to play dirty, but we are going to play hardball, and we need somebody who can do that, who can tie Hillary Clinton to the Soros and the policies that they stand for, and absolutely go after the Clinton machine and go after Hillary. The Clinton Foundation, this ransom payment, it doesn't stop. And as Mark said, there's so much coming out. We need a street fighter, and Republicans haven't had one in a long time. We're seeing one in Donald Trump. We're seeing a very good one. And I think this is why he won the primaries. Republicans are sick and tired of getting beat because we play nice and the other team plays dirty and they play hardball. It's time for us to take it to them. It's kind of like, Ronald Reagan took it to the air traffic controllers. They're looking for people with spine. Donald Trump, Steve Bannon, Kellyanne, they have the kind of spine that Republicans are looking for, and independents and people who just love America and don't want to go the way of George Soros.
Pete, sometimes you really need to just come out of your shell and tell us how you feel sometimes. It's really necessary. We're going to work on that for you. Don't worry about it. Mark, let me come to you on this one here. Hey, you've heard Pete talk about it, but I'm still going to play the middle ground on all this, because here we go, Mark. When it comes down to this entire issue here about Bannon, there are still people saying that he's not the guy. You don't need to do this. You've been street fighting for months. Get down to the issues. Do you agree or disagree with Pete?
I think we need a street fighter. I think Bannon's Lee Atwater on steroids. Let's face it, the left wants to win by any means necessary. The donor class has called it wrong since Bob Dole. McCain, as Pete mentioned, they're only interested in keeping the status quo and keeping their power. And frankly, they don't like Trump on trade. They don't like him on immigration. They'd like to see him lose. They'd be happy if they could keep the Senate and the House and Trump loses, believe me.
All right, let me talk about intelligence here for a couple of minutes we have left. You gentlemen are going to stay with us through the break, but I want to make sure we get to this. Donald Trump got his first intelligence briefing as a presidential nominee today, Pete. And the interesting thing is Donald Trump has said, I won't use them because they've made such bad decisions. Come on, Pete. What does it say to the intelligence community when the guy who might be your boss is basically saying, you stink, and I don't want to use you, and you're out of here? Come on, that's not the right thing to say when you're dealing with this early, is it?
Well, I think I was with Donald Trump yesterday, and the message was very clear to Donald in terms of what he expects and what others in the room, believe he should expect from intelligence. Number one, he needs quality product, and the intelligence community has failed on that. They've failed this president for whatever reason on ISIS, on Libya, on Syria, on Iran, and those types of things. We need to ratchet up intelligence and improve the quality, and it's probably because this president hasn't given the intelligence community the tools that they need to get the information that really is going to provide good insight. And the second thing that this president or the next president's going to need, and I know what Donald Trump is going to demand, he wants the truth. He doesn't want this stuff shaded one way or another to make his policies look good. He wants the hard, unadulterated truth so that he has the best information. Even if it comes back and says, hey, some of the things that you've been doing are wrong, he wants the data and he wants it unfiltered And he needs the best. And that's how he made decisions in business, and that's how he'll make decisions as president.
All right, I got 60 seconds left. Mark, I'm going to throw this to you. What Pete says is very well said. But come on, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Every intelligence community is out there, and every agent who's out there, they want to give the truth. Are we supposed to believe now that every single president for recorded time has basically wanted lies thrown in their face here? I still don't think this is the right thing you want to say to your intelligence community, that I don't need you.
No, but in the case of CENTCOM, some of the intelligence was to fit a political narrative, it looks like. So I think Trump is smart to be skeptical. He does need the unvarnished truth. He doesn't need intelligence to fit a political narrative. And we've got to be careful, because a lot of the stuff that we've been getting over the last couple of years has just flat been wrong, and we've been caught flat-footed.
I'm going to agree with both of you on this one because, quite frankly, knowing a lot of friends in the intelligence community, I know a lot of people who say we've been telling the truth for years. Certainly when you go back to what happened with Zarqawi, what happened back after 9/11, so much of that was basically fed information that wasn't true. Somebody was covering their butt, but we had people out there in the intelligence community, far-flung places around the world, who said, we're giving you the facts. If only you'd shut up for a minute and listen to us, then we're the ones who can actually help. So I'm going to agree and disagree and agree. So there you go. It's one of those things. And no sarcasm either. Pete and Mark are going to return on the other side of the break. We turn to the issues of ransom, Russia, and reaction to FBI files and Hillary Clinton. And your phone calls at 1-877-Newsmax on the hard line.
We do not pay ransom for hostages.
The United States of America does not pay ransom.
It is against the policy of the United States.
We believe this agreement actually saved the American taxpayer
Potentially billions of dollars.
Billions of dollars.
potentially billions of dollars.
Some would call it ransom. Others would call it nothing more than a deal that had been made and a payoff delivered. Still, there's this issue of timing, how poorly the White House responded about it all when asked, and something that came out of the State Department today. Your phone call is always welcome. Be a part of the show at 1-877-Newsmax, 1-877-639-7629. Welcome back, former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Pete Hoekstra, joined by veteran of the 1980 Ronald Reagan campaign, GOP media consultant, Marc Rotterman. All right, Mark, I'm going to start with you first up on this because I know Pete is just chomping at the bit to get on this one after today's announcement. The State Department announced today that a $400 million cash payment to Iran was contingent on the release of the American prisoners. This is the first time that they have acknowledged that the U.S. withheld delivery of the cash until the U.S. citizens had left Iran. Okay, here we go. We're going to play devil's advocate to start out here, Mark. Some people call this ransom. Other people would say this money was due Iran. We had agreed to give it to them. And this was just a deal made and a smart way to save the lives of Americans. All right, go.
It looks like the State Department, Ed, didn't get the memo from the White House. Look, the average guy in the street, it looks like ransom to him, and frankly, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, it's a duck, and they can spin it and slow walk it and talk about it any way they want, but the optics are terrible.
So let's go past the optics here, Pete. And again, what Mark's saying is right. The average person on the street believes this is ransom. But you've been in the inner circle before. You know how these things work when it comes down to people are being held, Americans around the world. Is this then still a hostage, a ransom situation, or is this something else?
Well, let me explain why I've been so passionate today. You know, I'm so passionate because I've met with intel folks who are at the front lines who risk their lives every day. And when they're told to cook intelligence to make it look good for the president, that's just wrong. I feel sorry for Kirby, the spokesperson at the State Department, because for the last 4 to 6 weeks, he's been having to go out and say, no, we didn't pay a ransom. And all of a sudden, you know, he told the truth today. But he's been put in an awkward spot. And the thing is, yeah, it's a deal. This is what happens in politics. This is what happens in international discussions each and every day. So why can't the president, why can't the Secretary of State and the vice president all come out and say, you know what, we really wanted to get these 4 Americans back. As part of this, there were these other negotiations going on about the money that we held from Iran. We tied the two together. call it what you may, but
okay, let me stop you there, Pete. You're right where I wanted to go. What would be wrong then with a president, a secretary of state, a vice president coming out weeks ago and saying, okay, look, guys, we know how this looks. We owe them this money. We want to get our people back. You can call it ransom, whatever you want, but quite frankly, and I'm speaking here just as a guest, as the president of the United States, I want to make sure our citizens are home. I want to make sure they get home safe. I want to make sure their families are happy. What would have been the problem with that?
That's what there's never a problem with telling the truth. Sure, there may be political consequences to it, but as a president, as a secretary of state, that's what you're paid the big bucks for. That's why you're in that job. But you're in that job to tell the American people the truth so that they understand how difficult these things are. And the other thing is, so you now don't get caught in this trap where Mr. Kirby comes out and actually tells the truth. And what happens? Once again, the American people believe their government has lied to them. And today they've just lost a little bit more faith in the government. We should be building up, let's have the policy debates and people come back and say, that was terrible to do. We shouldn't have done it. And then go on.
There you go. Okay, I'm right with you on that one. Mark, let's switch gears here. Washington Post. Why Vladimir Putin, wants a Trump victory so much he might even be trying to help him. Plus, in Politico today, is Putin playing Trump like he did Berlusconi? These are both interesting articles to look into. Mark, I ask you then and get your opinion on this. How concerned should we be that there are some Russian connections there with Paul Manafort? He's the guy working right with Donald Trump, and the fact that Donald Trump actually doesn't seem to have a problem with the recognition of Crimea as a part of Russia, which people go, are you kidding? The Russians walked in there and killed people. So should we not be concerned about this connection?
I don't think so, and I'd consider the source, Washington Post and Politico, both left-leaning.
Yeah, but I got to stop you there. Hang on, I got to stop you there, Mark. I'm going to be fair. Donald Trump did say that we should look into recognizing Crimea as a part of Russia. That has been rejected vigorously by both parties now. Let's stick with that. And he also has disdain for a lot of the United States alliances around the world. Doesn't that feed into what a guy like Vladimir Putin wants to hear?
Well, I think that may have been a misstep on Mr. Trump's part, but you want to talk about Russian connections, talk about the Clinton Foundation. They have far more Russian connections than Paul Manafort ever did. And I think that story's been knocked down. I think if you read Politico or Washington Post on any given day, Ed, they're just an arm of the Democratic Party and the Clinton campaign, frankly.
All right, let's go ahead and talk about the Clinton campaign here because, Pete, I want to switch. We only got so much time left. I want to make sure we get this in here. Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley asked for the unclassified portions of Hillary Clinton's FBI documents in a letter to the Senate's security director. He writes, as I've expressed in the past, inappropriate to unnecessarily mingle classified and unclassified information. You're going to see more of this. I'm going to get ahead of the text a little bit, saying it's regrettable that the FBI has imposed the burden of this task on your office by improperly commingling so much unclassified material with classified material. Let's make some sense of this here, Pete. The FBI improperly restricting access to Clinton probe files. What's wrong with that? Should everybody just be allowed to get all of these files at once, or should it be given to the people who will understand how to look at it properly?
Well, it's being given to people, Grassley and his staff, and the equivalent on the House side. They'll understand this information. My understanding of what came over was heavily redacted stuff, which means that it appears that there was lots of classified information in the emails that were on her personal server that the FBI had to talk with her about. And of course, the story is, well, there wasn't anything classified. This again dispels that whole myth. No, the people in the House and the Senate, they can deal with this information. They should have it, and they should have gotten it a long time ago.
Mark, do you believe that everybody should be able to see it, no matter whom it is? They all get it.
Well, I think Grassley and his colleague on the House side should be able to get it, but I think that the Obama administration is going to slow walk this to the end of the election, and then it won't be an issue. They're just going to stonewall.
A lot of slow walking here. All of a sudden, I feel like I'm going to walk from here to my office. It's going to take me 3.5 days. 1-877-Newsmax. Kathy's in Chandler, Arizona. Kathy, we're going back to what we talked about here. You believe that the president should not have paid the ransom to Iran. So 30 seconds. You believe that this was ransom.
I'll never get it out in 30 seconds.
Try hard, darling.
I'm trying to connect dots. He just let go of prisoners, terrorists, out of Gitmo. the other day, and everybody's scratching their head wondering why he did it at this time. Now we're hearing he paid $400 million to Iran to get back some of our prisoners. A few weeks ago, there was some question as to the emails that Hillary erased, and some talk about her being connected and naming names, big people. This Soros comes into play today about a connection with a global, arms to countries.
Okay, Kathy, I
And
got to
these
move
people
on. I
making a lot-
appreciate your call very much. You've made your point, actually, and a very good point. I got to get some others in here. Mike's in Fresno, California. Again, you're on the same page, Mike. You call it ransom. But let me throw this at you, Mike. What about the families who say, you need to get our people back, because if you don't, I'm afraid that my mother, my father, my husband, whatever, is going to get killed?
Yeah, that's fine. Let's say that up front, though. That was our goal. But, you know, we need more Oliver Norths. It was like the Contra Sandinista scandal, you know, where we were getting paid off with drugs for arms, and Ollie stood up and said, the buck stops here. This is what I did. You want to send me to prison? Go ahead. So why can't we bring people before the grand jury and hold them accountable anymore? Why can't we be honest?
All right, let's go ahead and go from there, because, guys, I only got 60 seconds left. We got so much we didn't cover here. But we're talking about honesty here, and we're talking about telling the American people the truth. Doesn't this come down to both candidates here? I'll give you 30 seconds on this, Mark. It doesn't make a difference which candidate. Isn't it fair to say that we're not hearing the entire truth from everybody all the time?
Well, I think it's symptomatic of our political system. There's a lot of good men up on the Hill, including congressmen that we're talking to today. But it has changed, and it's all about the spin. It's all about talking points. A lot of these folks can't even put out 2 sentences without the staff. But I would say that Hillary Clinton and her husband really have a problem with the truth, and they've had a problem with the truth for the last 25 years.
Hey, Pete, isn't it fair to say, I only got 20 seconds here, that everybody needs to be fact-checked, every single thing that they say, if you want to be president of the United States?
You need to expect, and it rightfully expected, to be fact-checked with your information. And, you know, I think Bill and Hillary and the president have a major problem with telling the truth.
If we ever start to get down to the point where we get politicians in Washington and we put everybody, I tell you what, let's bring out the old operation game, and we'll put the little electrode right there, and we'll see whose nose lights up, and we try to ask them to give us the truth. That'd be a hell of a way to start. Pete Hoekstra, Marc Rotterman, thanks so much for joining us, gentlemen. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Break to the political animal next, as Hillary Clinton goes back on the attack with a new TV ad, and why the left isn't scared about the new Trump campaign manager. We'll get to more of your calls as